6.5 years in a gulag. He's going to tell us a little story about why we don't want socialism. And this time he has permission to be as serious as he wants.
Before I start, I want to thank Ramsey Ann. When he learned that I spent some time in Russian prison, he just paid for my dinner. Thank you, Ramsey. My name is Alex Goldovich. It's a Russian name. And first a little bit about myself. I was born in 1947, so I'm 72 years old now. Yeah, sorry, 72 years young. I was born in Moscow, Russia, to the family of military officer in the rank of Lieutenant General. My father retired being the Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Corps of Engineers of the Soviet Army. That's why we lived in Moscow. Most of my life I lived in Moscow, although my father was transferred to some city. In fact, he took part in Korean War as an engineer. Moscow was that time, and maybe even now, the best place to live. It's at the very top of the pyramid. All the Soviet Union is like pyramid. And Brezhnev or Putin now are at the very top. I graduated in Moscow from third most prestigious university in Moscow with master's degree in nuclear physics. So no surprise that I worked for research and development company developing nuclear warheads. But at that time, they kind of pressed me to take a course. They call it Scientific Marxism-Leninism. Can you believe it? So I did it, and I did it with excellency. So now I feel like I'm an expert in socialism, communism, whatever is there. And I really wanted to know what is this about, because it was a big splash in the country. Everybody were talking, newspapers were pressing, there was special political information for everyone, radio, TV, everything was communism. So it's not surprised that very soon I figure out that so-called scientific communism is nothing to do with science, nor with socialism. It's all propaganda, words, promises that were never fulfilled. In 1993, I came to the United States as political refugee after serving 6.5 years in Gulag prisons. Actually, I was sentenced for 15 years in prison after being arrested in 1985, right at the year when Gorbachov took power, after his whatever election. But I didn't serve all that time because Soviet Union couldn't live longer than I was in prison. So it collapsed in 1991 and I was released as political prisoner. The reason for my arrest was an attempt to escape from my country because they don't allow anyone to live country freely. So it doesn't matter. If you apply, you end up in prison. If you don't apply and try to do it yourself, you end up in prison anyway. So what's the difference? So let's talk about the serious stuff. First, what is communism? Just to get over that. It is a pure utopian state where you work as much as you want and receive as much as you want. Isn't it perfect? Just excellent. There is no money just abolished, and everybody receives from the government what they want. Wow, I want to live there. How could it be? The propaganda said that the labor productivity would be so high that the national product will more than enough for everybody. That's what they say, but they don't tell how this production rate will be achieved, or why some people will not connive to have it all in their own hands. No word about that. These and very similar questions you can think about were never answered or even asked. It is no surprise that communism was never built in the history of mankind, but the attempts were numerous nevertheless. By the way, America, the land of the free, was the first country in the world to try the so-called communes of communist or socialist type. Starting from as early as 1824 until the World War I, there were about 35 pro-communist socialist communities. All of them has gone after 4 to 10 years. The reason for collapsing of this community was money and the kind of government who ruled what. The most prominent case I can remember is taken from Encyclopedia Americana in 1950. I tried recently to find it on the web, and I failed. It just doesn't exist. Wikipedia doesn't want to post any negative information about communism or socialism. But that case, in the mid of 19th century, had this history. A small community put together all money, bought property. Very soon, the dictator emerged among them, took all the money, and ran. Never found again. Sounds very familiar for me. Those communities that existed longer were based on Christian principles. There is kind of Christian communism based on principles of early church described in Acts chapter 2 and 4. They don't call it communism, but essentially they own property commonly, they work, they put the income together, they care about each other. This is perfect, but the people are also perfect, or almost perfect. At least they recognize that they are sinners and try to do something about that. In Russia, it's far, far, far away, especially when the church and all the religion was destroyed by communists. In 1970s in America, there was a second wave linked to hippie movement, and now there are 6 of so-called egalitarian communities, egalitarian communities. They won't even call themselves socialist or communist. The name is badly tarnished through the history. I wonder if Bernie Sanders, like so much unity and mutual care, equality and fraternity, sustainability and green environment and all this, why he does not support these communities? I know why. Because he won't be more equal than others. Because he won't have power to redistribute the wealth. Because it's too small for his ambitions. Now, about socialism. There is a lot of confusion about socialism. And few people know the truth among vicious contemporary propaganda and plain lies. First, socialism in Europe. There is no socialism in European Union, period. It is capitalism with private property ownership, private enterprise, and free market. The difference with America is taxes. Countries like Sweden and Norway are the welfare states of higher order than the United States. By the way, since Franklin Delano Roosevelt, America also became a welfare state for some level with Social Security. So Sweden, before 2018, it had it had income tax from 51% to 61%. In 2018, it decreased to 32%. Corporate tax in Sweden is 22% since 2018. Norway, still 45%, but corporate tax is up to 78%. Why Bernie Sanders does not tell us that he wants drastically increase taxes? Because it is unpopular. Because the myth of free stuff of socialism spread widely by leftist media and become more and more likable. Freebie is good. Free lunch, free beer, but you know better. First, it sounds too good to be true. It is likely a scheme. Second, there is no such thing as free lunch. There must be some string attached, and they are. You pay for your freedom. They already know how much you really need, and they give you a little less, so that you always ask them, and you will always pay them with your freedom. The socialists everywhere in the world need poor people in order to help them. They like large masses of people to be poor. They need poor and oppressed because without them nobody needs socialists. They need deprived and depressed because in helping them they will enrich and empower themselves. What to do with those people who are too wealthy to become destitute or refuse to be lowly? They will be called contra-revolutionaries, capitalists, fascists, supremacists, homophobes, theocrats, or just like every one of us, deplorables, and be wiped out from the land. No criminal wants to kill unnecessarily. The most humane way would be to force anti-socialists to emigration. In Russia, after Bolshevik revolt in 1917, thousands of renowned intellectuals were put on ships and transported abroad. It all stopped when Stalin grabbed the power in 1924 and started mass murders. Those who were less famous among intellectuals just ended up their lives in the Gulag. Next very important step is to reduce any resistance to the bright future of all mankind. Researchers found recently that in order to take over the nations, about 1/3 of the population must be exterminated. The three larger rivers in Siberia, look at the map, really, really large, are tainted even now with remains of victims of socialism. In Russia, under communist rule, from 40 to 60 million people were exterminated. China communists made the world record in the murder of their own people, from 60 to 100 million people in thousands of death camps. In Cambodia, another record was achieved. Up to 25% of population was dragged into killing fields. Other socialist countries are not exempt from the draconian rule. Same happened in Cuba, Romania, Nicaragua, and now Venezuela. If 1/3 must be murdered, then the rest 2/3 must be frightened. The executions must be really brutal and repugnant. I remember the stories that my friend and my father's friend, who spent 7 years in Gulag, told me. In 1927, 10 years after Bolshevik Revolution, they wanted to celebrate. After Civil War and Revolution, there were many orphan children, thousands and thousands, if not millions of them. So the rest of them, that year, 1927, were put in trains and moved to Siberia. Then they were loaded into barges on one of big Siberian rivers and loaded on the shore. Revolution happened in early November. So by November they should be kind of dealt with. In Siberia, in August it's already cold. In November there is snow and deadly cold. So all these kids slowly died on the shore of the river. Never published, never mentioned, just things happen. Who cares? 1 million more, 1 million less. People in Russia are less worthy than horses. Horse take some care, horse is strong, can drag a cart. People burn themselves. Just give them minimum, they are so good in survival. Another story, really dirty story. It is World War II, year 1942 or 43, and a barge of prisoners from Gulag is moving along Volga River. Very slowly, nobody cares. When it arrives to the point of destination, the workers open the barges and find a jelly inside. Not people, just jelly. All the human bodies turned into that nasty goo. That's how much people are worthy in socialist countries. I want to make one point. We all face these atrocities, let alone the political intrigue, propaganda, brainwashing, shortage of food and basic necessities, children taken from families, destruction of marriage, widespread immorality, raging corruption, militant atheism, governmental, cheap, free medical care, and politicized free education, the so-called guaranteed right to work that turns to be just mandatory labor. If you refuse the work, they point you arrest you, send to Gulag, and you work anyway, where they don't even point where to work, they just order you. in addition of human rights, not rights for perverse sexuality, but basic rights to free speech instead of politically correct or gender-sensitive speech, right to have a lawyer. We know the case with President Trump. Presumption of innocence, you know that. Right to assemble, free enterprise, right to protest, right to worship God, and many more inalienable rights that we all feel to be natural. We don't want it anymore. Our country, our livelihood, our families, our businesses, our children, our future is under furious attack from the rising ghost of communism. It's the words of Karl Marx in his Communist Manifesto. He said, ghost of communism is hanging over the Europe. It still does. We have the assaults that have not been seen any time before, right now, in this country. What shall we do? It's a great and difficult question. Democrats in America started as a party of slavery in the early 19th century. After 1960s, they do not support slavery openly anymore. They changed their tactics. Now they support immigrants, especially illegal immigrants, the contemporary equivalent of slaves. Slavery was abolished in Russia in 1861. 4 years before, America did it in 1865. Russian Revolution happened in 1917, 56 years later. Bolsheviks used former Russian slaves to start their regime. American Democrats, 56 years later, in 20s, after abolition of slavery, practically restored slavery in southern states. I see great similarity that deserves more attention. We can easily expect that present Democrats will follow the steps of Russian Bolsheviks if they take power. So what to do? It looks like the danger is so real and tangible. It looks like it comes from certain people we can point. We can fight, we can take this fight, and we can win. But in reality, it is a spiritual war. Jesus said, do not fight evil with evil. Why? Because it only multiplies the evil. We become in this way agents of that evil. We don't fight evil. Instead, Jesus said, if you want to collect burning ashes on the heads of your enemies, forgive them and pray for them. And it's difficult to do. I want to tell you a story or a parable or a fairy tale that affect me very much. It's a story of a young, ambitious knight fighting the dragon. In faraway country, there was a dragon who oppressed the people. And nobody could conquer him. Everybody was afraid. Suddenly, finally, a young man in shining armor appears and said, well, I will do it. I will defend this dragon for the sake of my people. he will not oppress them anymore. So he went to the castle of the dragon, and there was nothing. He went to the castle, and the servants were running away from him. They are scared. So he shouted, "Hey, dragon, show up! I will cut your head." No answer. Finally, he reached a big room with a throne, and on that throne there was a little creature, scary and obviously shaking. "Ah, you are here and you are oppressing my people," the young knight said. The dragon said, Please don't kill me. Just listen, I will explain everything to you." "What you can explain to me?" He take his glorious sword and zoom, cut the dragon in half. At the same very moment, he himself became another dragon. As long as there are Christians in America, socialism, a new world order must not begin in our country. God gave us this land, and only God can take this land from us, or us from this land to come home with Jesus. If any one of you don't know what that means, what I mean saying that, ask a person next to you and how to get home from total destruction of this planet. So I want to finish with prayer. Pray with me. We face the evil of socialism, communism, and the threat of revolution that became more and more real in our land. Our United States was established against all the odds under your provision, by your faithful people, for your glory. You said, "If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sin, and will heal their land." Lord God, Jesus Christ, we submit to your will. We praise your name. We pray to you. Heal our land. Save us from coming destruction, from the grips of lie and corruption. Glorify yourself in our beloved United States of America, one nation under God. Amen.
It's always worth hearing from the horse's mouth, somebody that's experienced it, so you can know what we're up against. The remaining speakers that we have are all going to be fairly quick. Casey, you here? Okay, Casey's going to tell us a story about how younger people have